This is Shaped for Law, a podcast series that plugs you into the world of legal technology. Join host David Fazackley, CIO of CTS, as he covers news and trends shaping the legal industry.
Hi, my name's Dave Fazackley. I'm the CIO at CTS, and this is the Shape for Law podcast series. And today it's another audience with session. But this time, rather than talking to one of the law firms, we're going to be talking to another partner of ours in the legal ecosystem of suppliers and partners that exist out there. And today it is an audience with the CEO UK of InfoTrack, Mr. Scott Bozinis. Scott, great to see you, mate.
Mr. Fazackley, hello, how are you?
I'm super, mate. Not bad at all.
Excellent, great. Thank you for having me on.
Scott, I've known you for a fair few years now when you came over here to the UK from Oz. And I found out something about you, which is you've recently bought a house, not rented one, here in London. Does that mean that's it? You are Anglophiled, you are UK, you've emigrated, you're dispatched. What is it? I mean, tell me about it.
That's a good question. 7 years in the UK now.
Is it that long ago?
Either I bought a house to learn more about the conveyancing process, which would be apt. We can get to that if we like.
Yep.
That's a very expensive way to learn about what you do for a living.
Yep.
But no, it makes sense to settle down in the UK. 7 years, it's going well.
And have you started decorating yet?
It's funny you ask that. I've started 3 or 4 projects and finished none of them. So it's a most amusement to my friends when they come over, and the living room is slowly filling with building materials, but none of them are exiting.
Is this just like empty? Is it empty walls or no walls? Well, is it like half-built walls? How bad is this?
The property's fine. I decided to do some decking in the rear. Then I put in a hot tub. Then I pulled that out. Now I'm putting in a swimming pool, so to speak. It's not big. But yeah, the bottom line is none of them are finished. But I think that's the thing about owning your own house. You can do what you want, and I'm taking full advantage.
Swimming pool, I'm just amazed. No, I just want the invite to your next party. You got a swimming pool.
I say that very tongue-in-cheek. It's very small.
Well, listen, welcome, and we're gonna get into some good stuff that you and I have had a chat about, and we've known each other for a few years. With me at one point being a client of InfoTrack, that's how we got together, and now that I'm at CTS, it's a partnership arrangement. But I want to dive into a few topics, which I think for our audience will be hopefully very, very informative. I'm going to start off by let's explore your world of InfoTrack, and let's explore the online world, because that's what we're talking about, which is law firms working with their clients online in the digital world. You're not doing conversion strategies here. What you do in this area is what you do as a business. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What you think, law firms, what you do for law firms. What is this online world? Where does it focus for you?
Good question. I think we call it client onboarding. Digital onboarding is the sort of the area that we're focusing in, one of many areas, which really has had a boom through the COVID period.
Right.
And it's funny how things move fast. And if I told you now that law firms have technology and whereby a client is using their mobile phone to read the chip off the passport to verify themselves, that's in the world now. That's
right. All
day, every day. And you sort of blink and that just happened. It wasn't that long ago where editable PDFs were sort of that's how you went.
Like, woo, that's the big thing. An editable PDF was the thing.
That is it. We
went a couple of years ago, or
just a few years ago, we went from sort of physical documents to PDFs to editable PDFs. Well, you blink, and technology from other industries is flooding into the legal market. And our onboarding solution, as I said, will read the chip off the passport. Many may know or may not know that your photograph is contained on that chip, and that's one of the things we're reading.
No, I didn't know that now. So is that part of the new passport arrangement? Because I've recently had one of those new passports through, which has all that. My older passport did have a chip, but I noticed that in the new passport, it seems there's this next gen stuff that seems to be in there.
That's right. One of the things on that chip is your photograph. So I'm not a movie buff, but if you cast your mind back to sort of, is it Jason Bourne and those movies where they get the scalpel out and they change the photograph on the passport? Well, that's a pointless exercise now. The photograph.
I've got to go home and just throw them all out the bin.
Yeah, that's
ruined my international espionage life.
Gone are the days of just pasting a photograph over the original and trying to commit a fraud. We read the chip off the passport. That can't be. We read the photograph off the chip, and that can't be changed. And look, that's just one of many things we do. But I think it just gives an indication of how far the industry's sort of moved when it comes to onboarding clients and the need to deal with fraud. Frankly, we're moving properties here.
Yeah.
Largest asset class in the country. Total value, £7 or £8 trillion.
It's incredible. I know through my last law firm, despite what our own personal revenue turnover was, our client account turnover was billions because of the cost of the transactions of housing going through those accounts. I mean, it's massive, and therefore it's an open book for fraudsters and cyber criminals to try and hone in on. And this is my old view that the old paper way of onboarding, even though we've had to move from that, we must, even without COVID, I'm going to say it was inevitable, because that's where all the fraud occurred, because it was easy. And now you need these digital solutions in order to actually be far more secure than you could ever be previously. I mean, would you reflect that as a truism?
Well, it is. We need banking-esque security because we're moving sums of money that are equivalent to cash, and they're large sums of money. And I will say full credit here to the Land Registry. It was an initiative by them to offer what they call safe harbour to any law firm. So any law firm that is using this technology to read the passport on the chip will be offered safe harbour, basically against any fraud by the Land Registry. So they've really driven this. So by sort of introducing this sort of policy that really can push the industry towards these sort of cutting edge technologies. But of course, fraud is only one reason we need to digitally onboard clients. That I've gone to one end, which is the fraud end.
Yes.
But there is a larger process of source of funds. So the process also will link up through open banking to your bank account. So gone are the days of getting your last 12 months of banking statements, having to collate those, send them to your conveyancer. Then your poor conveyancer has to go through 12 months of your bank statements. They've got better things to do.
Yeah.
And
they're also seeing personal information that
100%.
they shouldn't really be seeing.
Not relevant.
And what do you redact, what you don't? It was a nightmare area, and clients didn't like doing it. And
so ECOS is the name of our solution.
Right.
There are a few out there, but we were able to link up to your bank account and just pull through the top 20 transactions in and out, and that'll give the confidence to the law firm, speeds up the process, and to the consumer, it's great. You're on the app. Authenticate my bank, authenticate that information. So we've got convenience, we've got security. There's a lot going on in this space, and we hate the COVID word, but it is something that really meant that overnight law firms needed to find a way that wasn't physical to meet their clients. And a lot of this technology we've been working on for about 5 years.
Well, let's be honest, and let me be the one to put it out there. COVID drove law firms to this, right?
Definitely.
But other sectors were there already. A lot of other sectors were there already pre-COVID in their digital onboarding, their digital interaction with clients. They'd made steps further ahead before law. And COVID is a terrible thing, but it has driven like a shot of adrenaline into law firms that they had no choice, really. They had to do this, but they've now come to actually realise this is actually a really good thing.
Look, no doubt. You don't even go to a hardware store to buy. This week I needed some nails and a hammer for a job. I bought it online. I didn't think twice.
I do miss Maplin's, I've got to say. I used to love spending time going around Maplin shops. I really did. But you're right. I do buy everything now on Amazon.
So if you had have thought that the hardware industry would be a virtualized space before the legal industry, someone had put that to you, it just wouldn't sound right. But the truth is the legal industry is one of the latter industries, if I'm to be polite, to really get going in this space. But where we stand today, if you're a firm and you're not able to fully transact with your clients virtually, you're probably not going to get the referral business, and you're probably not going to give your clients the experience that they're getting in every other industry. And we know what happens to the industries that don't sort of, move on and digitise.
They decay, they fall away, and sometimes quite rapidly, and sometimes it's a bit more of a slow decay. So, when we met each other, which was, not quite 7 years ago, but probably when you were quite soon here, and InfoTrack were launching new innovative products here in the UK, very much I remember what the pieces of work that we did were about conveyancing and actually making online the process of conveyancing, linking to land registry, like you mentioned, to make things easier for lawyers to do the sort of transactions, with elements of it touching on the consumer space. And what you're saying now is, in these short period of time, what has now happened is, yes, that's now standard, and it's fully online with the clients. It's fully interactive with the clients as an end-to-end seamless process where these things now just happen. They're not piecemeal solutions. And then I say this before I let you answer, because I either bought in the piecemeal solutions, or I had some coders and developers fill in the gaps and recode some things to create client portals so that we could bring conveyancing online in a way that you couldn't buy off the shelf or do 5 years ago. We could use great suppliers for like yourselves to pass the solution. Now, I wouldn't if I had to do it again, I wouldn't design anything, because it's all your providers like yourselves provide it all.
Yes, that is our place in this market. I think a lot of point solutions, a very fragmented process. And if I just touch back on the onboarding process that we've brought together, we have brought together the reading of the passport, the e-signatures, DocuSigns, e-signatures.
Yes.
The land registry protocol forms are in there, digitised.
Right.
So,
yes.
So, just to give you an idea of all the things we've had to bring together, the
Yes.
open banking to get the passport. So
Yes.
very tricky to change the process of conveyancing.
Yep.
And I think there has been attempts to change the process of conveyancing to get the digital solution.
Yes.
And it just doesn't happen. It's too easy to break down. And so InfoTrack's place has been, let's not change the process. Let's just automate what's there and get some results on the board.
Yes.
There'll be further digitisations in the future. So literally we have tried to bring as many things together in one place. And I've just touched on a few there.
So like I just said, I had 5 or 6 solutions that are now in the one-stop shop, fully integrated. The trauma for law firms to have to solve these difficult problems is not that you don't have to solve it. You don't have to solve it anymore. But I am going to sort of ask a question about the other end, where you have to integrate your solutions with other legal software big providers, the practice management systems, the case management systems that firms have. That's still sometimes a challenge for law firms, getting those integrations and interfaces right. But how's your journey been with what is now actually a decreasing pile of individual practice management systems? A lot of coalition going on in the market there. But when it comes to your integrations into those platforms, have you found that as easy to move ahead as you have with the onboarding and the other client side?
Yeah, good question. And I think that's a good distinction. InfoTrack isn't in the CMS or the practice management space. That isn't our space. We fill another gap between sort of information and users. So therefore, it is important to integrate our services to case management systems, and they're not easy integrations. But if you only have to do one integration and you do it well, then it makes it worthwhile. And I think that was an interesting point. And we've integrated to, easily 20 CMS systems in the UK. And we do it what we think as well as we can, and we move information in 2 ways. We send documents down to the case management system. We pull documents from the case management system to maybe upload to government bodies, and then we move the metadata around. But the benefit is, if you do it with us, you do it once and you get a lot more scope. Whereas going back to a more traditional way, a poor CMS vendor's having to integrate to 20 providers just for the conveyancing process.
Yes.
And so it's a rushed effort. It's not and there's no sort of standard way to do it. So I think at least if we've brought so many places together, the integration we do brings a bit more value to the process.
Yep. So Scott, when you and I did some business together 5 or 6 years ago, it was very much just in the conveyancing space, but it would be unfair to categorize what you do now. I mean, law firms need to onboard clients from multi-practice sort of disciplines. So, I don't want to misrepresent what you and InfoTrack and what you're doing is about, because effectively all clients need to be onboarded and they have different digital journeys. So I'm assuming you've seen that expansion in your work and your interaction with firms as well.
That's a good question. We're very heavy in the conveyancing space. There's just so much work and opportunity to do there that we really barely got to lift our head up. And we're very aware of other areas of law. In other countries, we're very heavy in integrating in and out of court systems. But that said, in the UK, we're very big in conveyancing. But correctly, as you point out, the onboarding is the first time we've really meaningfully got out of the conveyancing space.
Yep.
And being able to onboard a client for a witness, a will, you name it, family law, every area of law, you've got to know your client.
Yes.
And the process we do really helps with that verification of identity piece digitally.
Now, I'm interested in law firms that have only done part of this journey, right? They've taken the bits maybe to muddle through and get through. And I'm curious about what you and I just talked about just a few minutes ago about people falling behind, as in law firms and lawyers perhaps falling behind if they're not on the right side of this journey. Now, consumers, if we think about the members of the public, their lives are digital in their personal lives on everything as standard, as norm. Okay, they just assume whether it's their Netflix subscriptions and their OneDrive cloud following them around and their devices interacting at home and all the rest of it, and their own No365. This is just normal to them at home. And they have now begun to expect this as the norm from their business partners and their service providers. Everybody does their insurance online and digital. You never see a letter, even an email. That's just not how it works. It's through portals. And many of the other industries, like you said, even with the trades, are now online. This is normal. So law firms, through COVID, the adrenaline injection, have moved to this direction. But there are just some firms that are not quite there, or just think that maybe they can just maybe carry on, and maybe this is a little contentious. But what are the dangers there for those firms that don't recognize there's danger signs here, that actually reputations used to be just about lawyers? I think this is what I'm getting at. The individual lawyer was the reputation of the law firm, and you go and choose them because that, and that's not, I would suggest, that's very important. It's not important enough on its own anymore, that actually the client will expect some type of digital journey that just reflects their normal life in every other way. And if it's not there, they're going to start having reservations. Now, am I on the right path?
You are on the right path, and to say it without saying it, if you're a law firm that isn't digitised, you won't be a law firm in a few years' time, because enough law firms have gone out and digitised, and consumers want digitisation. You want to sit at home and do things from the couch. You want to order your food that way. You want to let your lawyer know who you are that way. That's just a reality of life. No one wants to get in the car, drive down, park, and go in and have their passport photocopied by the secretary any longer.
No,
that's done. There is some good news though, and I think what this industry hasn't had that it does have now is some really strong vendors. Technical software vendors. And I think once upon a time, law firms were almost forced to write a lot of their own software, the bigger firms, and that's how they became bigger firms. There's a good selection of vendors out there now. So to the firms that aren't, cutting edge and haven't done that, don't sweat it. You can buy a lot of off-the-shelf solutions these days and catch up fast.
Like I said, he wasn't there 5 years ago. You had to create some of these solutions. That's not the situation today. And actually, it's not megabucks anymore. It's not develop it yourself, and it's not silly because it's commoditized, it's been designed, it is there, it is off the shelf, it's highly configurable. You don't need to be coders to configure these things. The suppliers, like you said, quality suppliers do what they need to do for you.
And to some of the suppliers like ourselves, most importantly, it's pay as you use.
Yep.
Gone are the days of having to have a big investment up front, not dissimilar to how servers work now and other parts of technology. It's pay as you use. So the risk to the firm of onboarding these providers is incredibly low because there's just not that big upfront investment.
Yes.
The risk to not doing this, terminal.
Yep. And I'm going to go a little bit further and say that actually the digital journey that if you're a law firm, the digital journey that you take your client on has to run nicely. It has to run smoothly. It can't be clunky. It can't be pick and mix and bits and that bit worked and that, because that used to be okay, but I'm going to suggest that's not good enough anymore. It's not for those firms that think, we've done this, that's enough. We've got an e-signature, that's all right. We don't need, I'm going to suggest they're wrong and they need to think again, because the journey, that digital journey with your client is key. But what's your thoughts there?
It is, and it is a complex process that needs to be linked up, and we're very much in this space and working hard to do it. Your client will find you from a Google search. They will want a quote. They will want a quote instantly on a Saturday night. They will then want to approve that quote. They will then need to go through the onboarding process. They will then want updates on their matter. There's still quite a complex process, but a lot of the companies are coming together, working together and solving this, and it is true. And the only way you ever know how you go is, as an owner of a law firm, is to experience it yourself. Put yourself through your own firm's onboarding process and decide if you would choose that process for your own solution. It's brutal, and we have to...
Well, I'm going to tease you a little bit, because you did talk about having to buy your home here in the UK for the first time, and you understand how you... Were there any learnings from that? And I don't mean about law. Let's not shame any law firms. I just mean even from your own software and interaction. I mean, were there any great light on revelations, or was it just making you more sure about certain things?
No, there were. I learned some things. I touched on this today. My property was a new build, and the water search said that there was a pipe under the property, and we all went, I very much doubt they built that. Who did the search? Yes, that was us. Got to own that. I staff often will come up from time to time, and they're in a position they might be buying a property, and can I have some free searches? They'll ask.
Yeah.
And I said, look, we don't. What we do isn't always sexy, and the least I can do is pay for your searches for your property. But more importantly, you must order them yourself, because that will be the ultimate learning experience.
Yes.
And so, I do like it when any staff member needs some free searches, be it for themselves or maybe a close family member. Go and order it yourself and see what the experience is like. It's the only way to see how your software really is.
And of course, you mentioned new build. It's not just conveyancing. It's a whole more complex world in itself.
Yes.
And I've had to work with new build lawyers before who rightly got very frustrated with, this is more complicated. It just has to work. You have to figure these things out, because there's more trapdoors. There's more ways this can go wrong.
Yes.
If it's a new build. And
government records aren't updated. Council and Land Registry haven't always got around to getting some of those new records on file. And
some of the plots don't match up. It says this is the plot, but actually it's slightly...
It's a fun part of the industry.
It's got an extra 2 foot over here, and that's, it creates a problem.
But the good news is, from a seller's perspective, you're probably not in a chain, so at least you don't have to worry about that.
So, you touched on something before, and I want to explore that a little bit. This actually is a little bit about the market. What you touched on was law firms developing software and code themselves. And I am someone who has, through various both corporate and consumer law firms, had development teams there. And 15 years ago, when I entered the legal industry, you needed it, because unfortunately the software providers provided their own software, but they didn't play nicely with one another and the other bits and pieces, and so you had to do that. And even in the consumer law firm space 5 years ago, we still needed to do some of these things. So I'd like you to sort of touch on why you think that might be different now, because it was quite a contentious maybe thing that you said, that law firms perhaps shouldn't be looking to develop, or that's not the right thing to do. What's driving that, other than there being better solutions? Are there other factors going on in the market at play that is driving this business case change for that?
David, I think that's a good question. I think there's some bigger market economics at play that we really haven't seen before. Probably triggered by the pandemic, but we have record low unemployment.
Yep.
And we have a lot of salary pressures we've never seen before. And these pressures are on our fee earners, and they're also on our in-house software development teams.
Across all industries, actually,
all industries.
The UK is seeing it.
Yeah.
Is that we've seen it in our business as well. People demanding higher wages, and
Absolutely.
because of low unemployment, there are more jobs out there, more opportunities out there where people can go, and that's making it a challenge. You're suggesting it's law firms, therefore, are fighting a harder battle?
So there's two things. We need technology more than ever.
Yep.
Because the cost of labour to onboard someone is now probably prohibitive.
Right.
If you can find the labour, if you can employ someone and afford them, you shouldn't be using them to do tasks that can be automated.
Yes.
Then when we look at the technology that we've got to lean on, software developers are the most sought after commodity in the world right now. All of the big tech houses are struggling to attract talent, and the wages are sort of astronomical. So, when you look at the buy versus build argument for a law firm, I think you've got to re-look at the economics of that and decide if building in-house software is the way to go, or at very least make sure you can't buy it off the shelf and pay for it as used, because there is bigger factors that are affecting our industry post the pandemic, and this is a real thing at the moment, a lack of talent in all industries.
So you're saying that the SaaS providers, that's software as a service, those solutions built in the cloud from design in the first place, doing all of these things, that there's enough solutions out there now that have solved a number of the key problems that law firms don't need to and shouldn't be designing and building those things themselves?
You wouldn't think for a second of recreating your own word processing tool. That's done.
At one point they did, I suppose. But I suppose lawyers really didn't like to lose the typewriter at one point. But no, you wouldn't.
You assume that word processing's done. You assume, and I think you've got to start to accept that there are other parts of the conveyancing process that now there are some really large global technology providers to this sector. And take the benefit of that, jump on their shoulders and turn those solutions on overnight. No different to how you might turn on another Office 365 account, pay as you go, per user, per month, off you go. Go and do the same for lodging your stamp duty or your AP1 or onboarding your client or writing your property report or whichever part of the conveyancing process that you're struggling to keep on top of.
So let me hit you with a little bit of a challenge back at some of that then, because most of these podcasts so far, most of my conversations are with CIOs of law firms who will recognize what you're saying and they're coming up with cloud-first strategy or SaaS-first strategies, and they're fine with that. There still remains problems and solutions not off the shelf. Sometimes it's with some of the bigger providers, and sometimes actually it's about data, and it's about actually smart use of data and understanding your data. Putting that in our last podcast with Mark Parvo talked very much about that, about the challenge of understanding your data and where it is and bringing it together. And sometimes law firms still need to invest in people to sort of do that, or don't they? Because what I'm telling you is there are less problems, I agree. There are more solutions off the shelf, but there are still problems. So to say that they shouldn't be going down the development route, I'm going to say maybe, but it's maybe a bit too early to that. But with these inflationary pressures on salaries, and actually maybe not attracting the resource or being attractive enough to get to the resource, what should the law firms be doing?
Work closely with your vendors. Consider whether you build another point solution, because when there's just small gaps left in the process, and you're welcome, anyone's welcome to solve that, but does it just create another point solution, another different piece of software, or can you work with a vendor that already exists, is in the space, and if they solve it for your firm and they solve it for a lot of firms, and it's not a strategic point of difference for your firm, it's far more economical to get it done on scale.
So the choice of vendors is actually is really important, because again, a complaint over many, many years, it's an old complaint, is the vendor's too slow to move in this direction. And maybe the challenge back to law firms and IT directors and people making the decisions is, well, your vendors should do this. And if they don't, maybe you've got to ask some hard questions about choosing vendors that not only have the solutions that have solved most of the problems, but basically play nicely with others by design, and have designed their solutions to be very interactive with other players. And if they're too traditional, or they're if their versioning is not right and that's not their direction of travel, then maybe you've got a hard question to.
It is a tricky one.
These things aren't cheap. Some of these
agility is something
systems.
that's become a buzzword from the technology boom, and to be agile is to be able to move quickly, move little, and move often, and you need that from a partner. The world is moving fast. Land Registry announces safe harbour. You need a vendor who can adopt that, in a timely manner, and a release in many years' time is not acceptable anymore.
So native cloud providers, I'm going to use that phrase. I'm going to nick it from you, actually, because I think in our prep talk, when we talked about this, you talked about that's the difference now that we're looking at. Cloud and SaaS has been around long enough now. Are you with your vendors who are trying to adapt their stuff to the cloud, or native cloud providers who've designed this stuff correctly from scratch?
It is true, and you want native cloud providers, not providers that are repurposing maybe first generation legal software that was built in a different era to be put in the cloud as an afterthought. And there is a difference there, and it's not easy, and I don't envy anyone in the position, but if you need a vendor that is built for the cloud from the get-go, you will just not get the scale out of them.
The business case challenge for the IT director, and again, I'm talking to someone who's had to put these budgets and get them through boards before, is, they may say, this is very expensive to change. If something's not broke, it's not perfect, but it's not too broke, so don't change it. But our conversation is on the now and the future, and that actually you're not going to have these developers to carry on looking after what you've got already, okay? It will come to a stall point. So you can put it off for a day or a month, but you're not going to be able to put this off for years anymore. That's the differentiator. Yeah. That's why you've just got to swallow this jagged pill at some point and make the choice, and make the choice towards these native providers. Is that how you see this market dynamic playing out now in the next few years?
100%. I mean, those that immediately had to work from home thanks to COVID, that had native cloud solutions, the staff went home, logged onto the computer, and didn't miss a beat. The phone calls came through the computer from the VoIP provider, the web-based or the thin clients logged back onto the cloud, and off we went. And those that didn't, and were all dialing back into a single point, if that didn't test you out or give you the fright that you need, what's going to? You need those native providers.
And you're saying there's an encouraging message basically to the market, is the maturity of these providers is now there. It's there. 5 years ago they were new, 2 years ago they sorted it out, now it's commonplace. It's mature, it's reliable, it's robust, it's security centered, security first actually built. I remember some of the challenging, what I was trying to do with you 5 years ago and convincing some fee earners is, they were saying, is this secure? And I'm saying, is this secure? Compared to what we've got at the moment, it's a multitude of 100 times more secure.
Yes.
The only difference now is I don't need to buy 5 things to make the security. There are mature providers out there that provide all of that in one holistic sort of system, and it is highly secure, and in fact far more secure than what you've got. So, what's your excuse? There's enough cyber examples out there for law firms and others of things going wrong at the moment.
Look, for me personally, I would rather Amazon was doing my security than I was doing it myself out of my office. Yeah. I'm glad that Amazon's doing my security, and I think,
yes,
they're bigger, they're better. That's who we trust.
AWS, Azure, the cloud platform,
whoever
Microsoft platforms.
100%. Bottom line is, it's not me in our office in Waterloo.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, and Microsoft and their huge drive towards security products like Sentinel and other things like that, where really it's not just next gen. It's really, really good. It's really good stuff. They're really taking this at the heart of the design. It's not an add-on. It's at the heart of the design of what we do. Absolutely. So just like you're saying to law firms, why are you trying to be the IT department and reinvent what you do? Also, even as these mature suppliers, why should we cure security when Amazon AWS and Azure and Microsoft Cloud and others have built this in? Yes. To start with. That's a good point.
I mean, we didn't touch on this, but technology got complex fast. Yeah. And I think, 5 years ago, writing software in house was good, but now does it work on the iPad? Does it work on my phone? Things got complex quickly, and so
Yes.
we do have to go with big providers that will get the economic costs down, but also deliver the features that now consumers are demanding. This I haven't brought this.
That's right. That's what we said before, isn't it? This is
consumer.
I got this at home. I've got other businesses I work with that do this. Why the hell is my law firm crazily sending me, still expecting me to come in and sign things and or send huge amounts of documents over email that I have to print out and deal with? It's crazy.
I expect to start a process on my phone, on the train, and then I walk home, come in the front door, sit down on the computer. I expect it just to continue the process seamlessly.
Yeah,
that's an expectation now, and I think everyone expects it from other providers. And if you're in the legal industry, your clients are expecting it from you too.
Yeah. So let's be a bit futuristic. Let's look ahead if we can. What do you think, given how much change has happened, and maybe given COVID was that accelerator, will things slow down a little bit? Or what do you think people should expect as sort of emerging trends in this next period?
Look, probably just in my sector, which is the conveyancing sector, is a real move towards a platform to assist the process. I think we're seeing, we need a platform whereby we can shift monies, shift titles, communicate on inquiries, get off traditional email-based systems and various systems to a purpose-built platform.
Right.
And I think that's where we're moving.
One collegiate place.
I think
that solves those problems rather than...
There won't be maybe one collegiate standard.
Right.
There might not be a place, but I think that's where...
A framework, perhaps, common
I think
framework.
That's a better way. And I'm not talking sort of 5 to 10 years, but I think in the space I'm in, I think that's where we're seeing. If we're seeing the process come together, the last piece of the process is to bring two sides of the transaction together, not via email or telephone, but via a purpose-built, understood platform.
And do you see that digital acceleration across non-conveyancing other areas as an opportunity for yourselves and other providers, as well as something that...
I mentioned the court sector before. I'd love to get involved in that. I think there's a huge digitisation opportunity that other countries that lead in this space, and I think for anyone in that litigation sector, data in and out of the court system is something that would...
And we have a mixed bag on the court system here, where some have gone paperless and some haven't. So that's actually a nightmare for law firms, which is, which practice areas are allowed, are in which courts, and therefore which courts have gone digital and how have they gone digital. And some of them went digital and said, you can't bring paper in, it's got to be laptops, and their Wi-Fi wasn't up to standard. So you're going in there with terrible connectivity. Yes. But they only seem to have dealt with the non-paper, bring in an endpoint device, let's have some good Wi-Fi. That's just a starting point, isn't it? There's the whole jurisdictional system in courts needs some fuel injection, digital fuel injection.
It's ripe for innovation. I think a conveyancer out there can sit on any number of 12, 24 CMS systems and order something from the land registry, not blink and have that document in their conveyancing system. We need the equivalent for the nation's courts. We need to be able to lodge documents, and we need to be able to pull documents down. You asked me about other areas of law.
I don't know if the government's listening to this podcast, but hey, you've heard it here from Scott Bozinis,
that's
ministers of state. Sort of get in touch. Let's just finish by talking a little bit more about. Come on, you're the chief exec of InfoTrack, and like you said, you came here from us 7 years ago. I know your family and your history is with your parents is InfoTrack over in Oz, so it's in your blood, okay? And I remember when we started 5 years ago, and you had a number of clients. I think we were your biggest client at that time. You've been on quite a journey for 5 years. Come on, I'm giving you a podcast moment to show off a little bit about InfoTrack. I mean, what's behind the success? I mean, you've grown quickly, and what is behind that growth and that success?
Thanks, David. Look, I think we're obsessed with what we do. We love conveyancing. At this stage, we really don't do a lot outside of that. We love problem solving. We're not here to be bleeding edge. I think being bleeding edge is not helpful to this industry. We're not a disruptor, but we love automating the process that's in front of us. We love being product-led. And I think, like most tech companies, it's this culture of that's done, what's next? That's done, what's next? That's done, what's next? And I think, I'd like us to be seen, and hopefully we are seen, as just that product-led solution. I think if everyone thinks of their favourite piece of tech or their favourite tech company, it is because they like the product. It wasn't the price. It wasn't the fact that they were forced to use that. It was just the product was great. I natively gravitated towards that, and I think I'm a product person. I love building software products, and I think hopefully that's why InfoTrack has had this success. It just builds the products that people gravitate to,
and they work.
They've got to work.
They've got to work. It sounds like a stupid thing to say, but a lot of software, in my experience, doesn't always work or as it should. My own opinion on it, whether you want it or not, is that you simplify things for the clients, you simplify things for lawyers, you simplify things for the support staff that are there. Certainly from a law firm business point of view, you help them understand their costs and make them cost effective and efficient, and that's another important thing also to the success of the business cases of law firms. And like you said, your products, you innovate, you move forward. You don't rest on your laurels. That's my sort of take, and that's why I'm unashamed at saying here that I'm a big fan of InfoTrack. Scott, can I thank you for coming to spend your precious time with me today? You're the chief exec. You're a busy man. You've spent some time talking about, I think, important things that are going on in the market, what has been going on, what is going on now, and some challenges out there for lawyers and law firms and others to sort of think about. And I thank you for that.
Pleasure. My first ever podcast. So here I am telling people about getting into the future, and I've finally caught up to the podcast game. So
it's only my third, Scott, so don't worry about it. This is a new game to me as well. But thank you for being my guest. So thanks very much to Scott Bozinis, Chief Exec UK of InfoTrack. This has been another audience with in the Shape for Law podcast series for CTS. My name's David Fazakli, and I'm signing out.
Thanks for tuning in to the Shaped for Law podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode and picked up useful insights into the world of legal tech. You can catch more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. Whilst you're at it, I would greatly appreciate your support by liking, sharing and leaving a review of this podcast. Until the next time, this is David Fazakli signing off.